Hello everyone and welcome to the Deeply Renegade podcast. My name is Molly, also known as the Deeply Renegade, and I'd like to welcome you guys to episode 307. Today is Sunday, March 1st, 2020, and I'm glad you could join me today. This is likely going to be the last podcast here, but here is putting on quite the show. So we have some purple flowers and some cactus and some crazy yellow flowers over there. So we are definitely in bloom today, which is pretty cool. Now that I'm sitting out here, it's the sort of that first day in April when the cold is broken up north, and then all these people go outside in shorts and t-shirts even though it's 40 out. That's how it feels today. Whatever. It was a t-shirt is probably inappropriate attire, but it's not totally inappropriate. It's just it's the appropriate amount for a beautiful spring day. And to be quite frank, spring's been happening in San Francisco since January, so who knows? It might just be perpetually spring here. So it's been a little bit of a gap since my last podcast. So it was the case where I was in Mexico for a week, which was a lot of fun. My cousin was successfully married off. It was probably the only wedding I've been to where the groomsmen did something useful. It was a little bit windy, and so the gazebo that they were getting married under began to tip. And so the groomsmen had to be called into action to right the gazebo mid-ceremony, which was pretty funny. So that was a good time. There was a lot of chilling, sunburn in entertaining ways. It appears that my sunburnedness is over now, so I can go back to being my normal pasty self after this. But then immediately before that week of vacation was Stitches West, so I wasn't able to attend the entire show because I had a plane flight to Mexico. What would it be? I don't think I would have changed my vacation plans for that. It was just the case where I finally looked it up and was like, huh. So I've actually been off for quite some time. And haven't been home around a lot in order to keep half and half in stock, so I'm actually drinking ice cream coffee because there's plenty of ice cream in the freezer, but there just isn't half and half. I guess I will start with the knitting content because it's not too crazy, all things considered. And then I can go into some of the stitches content as well. So it was my intention to finish knitting a pair of socks for my grandpa on the trip, but I failed. Had I finished the first sock before starting, I would have succeeded, but when I got on the plane, I was approximately here on the sock and managed to finish up the first one while on the flight. Unfortunately, the flight back was a lot darker, and we didn't actually have personal screens on that particular airplane. So what ended up happening was there wasn't all that much knitting on the flight back. I don't know, such is life. So this is the first sock. This is the one that I ended up finishing within, I think, the first couple of days of the trip. This is Wilmisa Twin in the Baristo colorway, and it is gorgeous. I am having a hard time. So When I decided to record like 15 minutes ago, the sun was not out, and as soon as I came out here with hot coffee, that was when the sun decided to peek out. I was gonna wait until after 2, but whatever. So, it's not the end of the world. I was knitting the scatterbee pattern, but it was a little bit annoying to knit, and it was really hard to see the pattern, so I ended up ripping back and doing something more like a garter rib instead. So I have regular ribbing up here, and then that smoothly transitions to the garter rib pattern. Here you go. That's a little blown out on color, but you can actually see the texture. So it's a really nice little texture pattern, not too crazy. Fairly, oops, stitches falling off. Fairly straightforward to knit because you end up having like a ribbing row alternating with an all knitting row. So it's a pretty nice pattern for socks. And I have been much happier with that one. Not like it's the most entertaining knitting ever, but it's alright. So I am about as far as I am on this socks as what I was when I showed up at the airport. Or roughly speaking, about as far as I was when I showed up at the airport with the first sock. So I think I'm almost done with the gusset decreases now, or awfully close, and I just have to motor on the foot, but it was the case where I was working on like the heel flap on that last full day, and I was like, there is no way. So, my week was busy with more than just knitting, and that's not a big deal at all. So, but this was basically the only thing that I ended up working on that whole week, in addition to the week before as well, so not too crazy. I am glad that I managed to get as far as I did. What that means is that I didn't end up touching any of the other projects, so I brought yarn to cast on a pair of knits for the Dear Sweet Level one, but it didn't end up working out. So those are going to be sitting in my bag at least for a little bit longer. And then there was some spinning, so maybe if I hadn't spent as much time spinning in the lead up to vacation, there might have been a hope, but whatever. So, I did end up finishing a skein of the purple blue. And I ended up getting a start on the spinning for the blue purple. So this is my finished skein. So purple blue. I'd have to like look up what in the world I did, because I did end up counting this, I think. So we'll just take a quick visit to Instagram, because that is where I write things down in the moment. No big deal. So I'm glad that I ended up getting another one done. That means I have 3 left to do. Started spinning on that, not too crazy. Let's see. Alright, on the 18th of February, this is 304 yards of 3-ply, 2 ounces, rough numbers. I need to sit down and probably weigh them all and update that information on my Ravelry project blade. So, Jenny the Fleece is proceeding. So I just have this plastic Ziploc bag full of these color-shifted yarns. And life continues on. So, like, you can definitely see that you end up getting quite a lot more contrast. So this one is like the all teal, and this one ended up being a much beefier skein. I'm going to have a pretty beefy all purple skein as well in this project. So, I don't know. So, you can get a sense for I don't even know which one to end up showing because they're all just so you end up getting some pretty good differences between the skeins, spinning it this way, which is cool. So I don't even know why I would grab some skeins versus the others. Who knows? So I have one more transition skein, and then I have 2 more solid skeins, and that project will be complete. So I'm working on the last transition skein, which is going to be blue, blue, purple. That's probably going to be a pretty small skein in the grand scheme of things, as you do. But like that's what happens. Like this is a hand process, and it's not always going to. What would it be? It's not going to be perfect, no matter how carefully you measure and quantify. So, what was nice about Stitches West was, so Romy Hill was hanging out in the A Verb for Keeping Warm booth, and so I had a chance to talk with her, which was lovely, and then try on her sample for the Mesa sweater wrap, because if I'm going to be putting that much time and knitting into a project, I really wanted to put it on my body and see if I liked it. And so it's definitely putting off a very flowy, vesty sort of vibe, but I thought it ended up looking really good. So in that regard, I'm feeling confident that if I knit it, I'm actually going to like it. And then I really actually, looking at it more closely, like how she ended up doing the color transition, so I thought that was also pretty cool as well. So it shouldn't be, so I'm thinking it's going to end up lending itself fairly nicely to my plan of having 9 smaller skeins in the project instead of 4 big skeins in the project. So I'll have like it be like a little bit longer, but that's not the end of the world. What it boils down to is that basically it's a rectangle with some armholes, and so the fronts end up flowing a little bit longer, and then the back ends up being that. So probably what's going to end up happening, because my yarn is pretty fine, I'll be knitting it at a tighter gauge, and but I think the pattern ends up translating pretty well for that. And then I'll probably end up doing a lot of weighing to figure out what my where my transitions need to be, rough numbers, to make that work. So that was really exciting. That was something that I ended up doing on Friday. I ended up hanging out with some friends in the market on like Thursday afternoon, and also Friday after they were done with classes. I ended up going to it early, and I managed to not give Stitches any of my Stitches events any of my money. So what I ended up doing was I volunteered to help set up the booth for Black Squirrel. So I ended up coming down. I was supposed to pick up labels, but then it got weird, so I just helped like put yarn on pegs, install or whatever, put together flat pack furniture. And the booth ended up looking really, really good. So there was only a little bit that wasn't done in time for the market opening, and that sort of boiled down to the missing labels that I couldn't have gotten anyway, so no big deal. And it was nice to get to hang out with some people. So I ended up receiving this badge in order to come in and out freely from the marketplace, and it was actually for one of the people who was going to be doing a meet and greet in Chase's booth. So I got to be fake Jessie all weekend long, which was sort of hilarious because some people were trying to be very conscientious to like use my name, and it was so wrong. So it was very entertaining to wear the wrong name tag, basically. And then it was also hilarious because I ended up running into the real Jessie in Little Skane Ann's booth. So that was a good place to sit and knit and not buy stuff. And so it was a little bit hilarious, so we ended up taking a picture together. Because they managed to print her out an additional tag, and then at the end of Friday I ended up just giving my fake Jessie name tag away to someone else, and they wouldn't have to pay to get in the market either. Because, I don't know, like, that was one thing that I really didn't like, was that it was like $15 to get in. And they had discounts available for some of the days. And I don't know if this was a choice because they ended up deciding to have it be free entry on Sunday, but I just found it to be strange, personally. So it was nice that I was able to borrow a tag and do that sort of thing. But in addition to being able to get into the market for free, I also ended up receiving something in payment from Chase, so I'm very excited about it. Right now it's holding all of my yarn. As I was setting, so this would be the case where this is like a conversation from Knit Night that turned into a really cool bag. So this was actually two of the women that I ended up knitting with in Berkeley on Thursdays ended up collaborating to make this bag. So Dawn did the block prints, and Sally ended up sewing it together. So Sally is behind Produce Bags, and Dawn is behind John Landick's designs, and she has some really, really gorgeous designs. So this is my San Francisco bag. Oh, and this is this is the yarn company of Jessie from Me to Yarn. So what we have here is all of these San Francisco landmarks that are like block printed onto the bag, which I just thought were really cool, and every bag was unique. And I just thought that it was like a really cool representation. But I knew I wanted the one with the navy bottom, and this is like a denim sort of fabric here. But then I also wanted one that had Sutro Tower on it, because that's actually, we're going to be living in the shadow of that now. So it was the case where that is the big television tower. And as you're driving over the Bay Bridge, it looks as huge as the skyline. Because it's a pretty massive little television tower. I don't know, it must have been that they ended up building it like when broadcast television ended up becoming a thing. Because the site used to be air missile defense. Yeah, the more you know. It ended up being antiquated or whatever, mothballed fairly shortly after it was made, so. No big deal. And it is holding most of what I ended up getting as stitches. So I think I had mentioned in the last podcast, like, general, rough speaking, what it was that I was looking for. And I ended up only buying a little bit of things on Thursday. Thursday was primarily to wander around and look at stuff. And then I ended up picking up stuff on Friday because I had a chance to get through a decent portion of the market. Excuse me. It was huge. It was a very, very large convention center. And there were a lot of different places there. So that was really cool. There was a lot of variety. I would say I thought I was setting myself up for an impossible quest in order to get a sweater's quantity of a gradient of non-superwash wool, but there were actually several choices available. So I ended up going with one that ended up making the best, or I went with the option that had the most colors available to build one. The one thing maybe that I was somewhat disappointed about was that there wasn't as much fiber. There wasn't as much spinning stuff, but that was probably better than Stitches, Texas, where it was like close to none. So it was a case where I ended up trying to make sure that I ended up buying from people who were selling fiber, because I want to make sure that they continue to stock it. Because there are a couple of places where I love spinning their fiber and they don't bring them to shows anymore, which bummed me out. It's like Western Sky Knits. I would buy fiber if you brought it, but such is life. So I ended up, or what was it? So it was a case where I was shopping for yarn for Isbray or Scrim Ring. I ended up getting the Scrim Ring yarn. I didn't end up buying the Isbray yarn, which is probably fine, because no big deal. I ended up getting this at a shop called Wall of Yarn. So two very charming dudes there. And it's gonna be like it's slightly annoying in order to assemble all of this. So I ended up getting 12 skeins. These are 50-gram skeins, and I ended up getting the Phenol PT2 by Rauma. I figure, what would it be? This ends up coming highly recommended as colorwork yarn. But now I need to figure out how to assemble everything. Alright, we got 4. Oh, yeah, we're gonna make it work. So, maybe the only one that's maybe slightly off is this super duper bright one here. But it's not too crazy. In some ways it was a little bit challenging to me to put together something that actually has so much pastel. But this is the gradient going from light to dark, and really it boiled down to having like a very, very nice dark teal. Ended up sealing the deal for me. And so it was the case where it was a little bit of challenge, like trying to get these, deciding between these middle 3 here, the light and the dark, were very easy. This one was pretty obvious as well. So I think I managed to get a pretty good range of tones here, and it's going to be a lot of fun to knit. This is going to be my first steek sweater, not because I'm scared of it, just because I haven't got around to it. So it should actually be quite a lot of fun. I haven't put this stuff on Stash and Ravelry yet. Mostly just because it's been a little bit crazy, so there wasn't a lot of time like I was spending when I ended up getting back from the show, like packing, getting ready for the next adventure. The other thing that I ended up getting that maybe was something that I hadn't planned, like wasn't strictly speaking on my list, was a kit for Vacillate. So Vacillate is a Cindy Garland design, and then her husband Tom Garland dyes yarn. Sadly vinegar, but oh, such is life. And so I ended up getting this dark jewel tone rainbow, and then this, what would it be? A very nice gray to go with it. And it came with like this ridiculous, you remember like the sucker gem pop things? Whatever. So it's got some, it's just slightly ridiculous. And I thought their packaging was so cool, so they ended up just putting it on like hangers. Oh wait, like the skein's falling apart. Oh well, no big deal. So, so it was the case where I was looking to see if there were other people who were doing mini sets like this, and it was just the case where I just really liked the way theirs was as well, because it was the case where I wasn't really sure what yarn I was going to knit that pattern with. I think I ended up we normally hand out a free pattern whenever you end up buying yarn for them, so now I'm just like slowly but surely falling behind. Oh well. So the colors are Mulled Wine, Broken Heart, Rusty Gate, Filgary, Enchanted Forest, Stained Glass, Westminster Blue, and Regal Purple. So, very cool. Like a very nice sultry jewel tone for sure. And so the gray is going to end up being really great contrast with all of those colors. So, already have the pattern. And it may just be where I end up giving it to someone who's interested in it, for example. One thing that I ended up getting before the show even, and then I picked up on Thursday, was a skein of Shibui Knits Silk Cloud. So I ended up getting this from Monarch Knits, which is a shop in Santa Cruz, I believe. They were one of the few people bringing Shibui, and it was the case where I just wanted to make sure that I got it, because the mohair silk yarn was very, very popular, very, very prevalent at the show, and black goes with everything. So I will now finally be able to finish knitting my boxy. So I'll have to figure out how I'm going to set up winding, or if I end up waiting to get settled in. I'm not sure which way I'm going to end up going. I suppose it would make sense to finish this stupid sweater now that I missed the deadline for knitting the socks. But, oh, such is life. And then that was all of the yarn. And now I have a little bit of fiber, I do believe. So I ended up buying 2 braids from what would it be? Greenwood. Was it like Greenwood Fiberworks or just Greenwood? But so this one is an 80% superwash BFL, 20% nylon. And what I thought was fun about this colorway was actually sort of the pops of brown. So I'm very interested to see how this sort of synthesizes into a yarn. Maybe it makes sense to do, like it might be fun to do the sample along stuff with this or something like that. I'm not sure. I might end up doing something that's more like a 3-ply sample along thing, but so this is going to be spinning for socks. I feel like, what would it be? That's sort of where I'm heading right now, is I think doing a lot of hand-spun socks coming up. And then the other thing I ended up getting from Greenwood was a new blend. And this one also had browns in it as well. So this is 60% merino, 20% yak, and 20% silk in the mallard colorway. So this one has browns, teals, and greens, and it sort of fades into a gradient. So this one has very structured sort of, it's very structured color-wise. So it's probably like a little bit darker than what's showing up on the screen, but the acid green is acid green, so. So I just thought that this blend was really cool. I really like how yak ends up dying, so it ends up making for a very, very nice jewel tone. And then the last thing in this bag, I've just got like fiber all over the place, is a braid from Redfish Dye Works. So this is what would it be? So this is 50% silk, 50% superfine merino. I don't know if I've bought this exact colorway before, but I just really liked this one because it had the teals, blues, and blacks in it. So an awful lot of teal happening over here for some reason. But this one's probably the bluest thing I ended up getting. So it's possible that I've already bought this colorway before and it's hiding somewhere in the stash. I know that my fiber stash is pretty out of date. I was contemplating if I wanted to do something ridiculous with her silk yarn, and then decided, it's like, chill out. So, what is it? But not too crazy. So this is, a dyer that or Grainwood and Redfish are both dyers that I've gone from before and really enjoy seeing their stuff in person at shows, so, and I wanted to make sure they kept bringing it, so. The only way to do that is to, make sure they end up having a good show too, right? So, the other thing that I ended up getting, which was, probably a little bit too deep in my bag in order to extract, but it's not like it's a big deal, was I ended up getting a 9-inch circular in 00 from Fiber Lady. So they're actually a business based in the DFW Metroplex, and they had lots and lots of Xiaogu stuff. So they're like walking around a little bit more, there was like they definitely hit every one of the major manufacturers for needles. So this is my first time using Xiaogu 9-inch circular. I already like a lot of their other stuff, so I don't see any reason why it won't be enjoyable. Part of this is just that I wanted to be able to knit in the round on the ridiculous fingerless mitts for my husband. So not too crazy. Let's see. Any other things I needed to cover? I don't know, it was the case where I ended up having a lot of good conversations and hanging out, which is really nice. What would it be? It was probably a little bit of a bummer that I couldn't end up spending the full weekend, but there wasn't really too much that I could do about that. I already planned, I wasn't changing those plans. But the next festival will actually be in October, so that's going to be Lambtown, so that's actually run by Henry of Clemis and Clemis. So, and that's like not too far away from here, so it's going to be a nice drive where I'll figure out how I can join in on plans on various knitting routes in the area. I suppose that ends up being worth mentioning was it was a little bit hilarious, like walking around the market and be like, this person is familiar, but now I don't remember where I met them. So it was the case where I ended up seeing people from various knitting groups I visited, various shops, and then the classes I ended up taking in early January. So working on building up my own little knitting community here, which is good. Would it be moved to a new town, need to make new friends, life continues on, so should be good. We'll see. What would it be? It'd be the case where there's an awful lot of it'd be the case where things are going to be pretty busy, at least for the foreseeable future, but, or would it be? The odds of me podcasting next week are zilch. So I'll be able to come back again, hopefully in the new place, and hopefully I'll have some finished objects to show you guys, that would be fantastic as well. I guess I did have one FO this week, but spinning. So, let it be, just keep on keeping on. So, with that, I hope you guys have a lovely week, and I look forward to talking to you guys soon. So, take care, guys. Bye-bye.